Hi, and welcome back to King Poe Myers. I'm Mariana,
And I'm Dylan.
and we're back with another podcast episode. Of course, that's what we're here for. And this is our very special King Month, which we highly appreciate. And every week we have a different guest. And today we have Tony from Tony's Horror Corner. Hi, Tony.
Hey guys, how are you?
Very well, thank you. And you?
Not bad. Not bad.
So before we start, we want to know a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you have in your website, not your website, but your IG.
My Instagram, I kind of started a few years ago just to alleviate my friends from book posts because I just kind of started getting into it. And I was like, all right, we need to separate things. And
yeah, that's still 100%. Yeah.
And it kind of grew into something a lot more than I ever really thought it was going to. Now I just kind of keep up with it every day and post all the time, whether it's mostly King stuff, but I tend to branch out every now and then.
We loved it. We really enjoyed I don't know how we found you, but it's one of those, perks of the internet. You just find someone and you like that post and you see that comment and then it leads to something else. And you have such a variety as well, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that you were posting about Goosebumps. That was great.
Oh my god, yes, that's right. We have. Do we have the movies? We have the movie.
Yeah, but the one they posted about was Nightmare Hour, and I read that as a kid, so that was very nostalgic for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
We don't have any Goosebumps books, do we?
I think I may have some in storage somewhere, but
I don't think I have any anymore. I had a couple when I was younger, but
they still exist, right? Please tell me they still exist.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's still writing. He's crazy. He's like King. Like he's older and he's still producing a lot.
Isn't he like Did you watch the movie?
I haven't seen the movies. No.
It's
there are a couple, right?
Yeah. We didn't see the second one, but the first one has Jack Black as R.L. Stein. And
that's fun.
That's very
if
fun.
you're a 90s kid,
Yeah.
If you grew up with Goosebumps, you'll absolutely love it. It's all the books.
It's all the books, and it was
can't
very
go wrong
well
with
made.
Jack Black either.
Right?
He's the best.
And he makes a pun of for King. What was the book?
Oh yeah, he takes several shots at Stephen King, and they're outstanding.
They really, really are. So our first question that we always ask you, especially for King specials, is why do you love King?
I don't know. I kind of, when I started reading him, I kind of just stumbled upon him. I was on a little kick about people that have powers and stuff like that. So I found Carrie. I just stumbled upon Carrie, which ironically was his first book too. And I really enjoyed it. And then after that, that Christmas, my mom got me Dr. Sleep, but I couldn't read that without reading The Shining. So I had to go do that, then Dr. Sleep. And then I just kind of started picking them up and reading them as I wanted to. And I haven't put him down since. So it's
nice.
And I just really like what he is able to do the way he describes everything. I mean, some people get a little bogged down by it, but I think he's pretty unmatched when it comes to world building and characters.
Yeah, he does create amazing atmospheres. You feel like you're there. Whenever you read a Castle Rock story, you feel like you're in Castle Rock. It's really surreal. His
and that's
style.
If you and listeners have read it, last summer I actually went and visited King's Domains Designs. I visited him, and Jesse and I went and did the whole King tour of Bangor, which is literally Derry, and it was really cool to see all the things that he describes in it, but actually see it in person, the Bunyan statue, the canal, the bridge, everything. It was really, really cool.
The Bunyan statue actually exists.
It does.
I did not know that. Oh, that is great.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
That's literally, you took one of the last questions we had for you because we know that you went, and we're like, oh my god, we want a fangirl. People know me. I don't do horror. I don't read King. I rather interview you guys, and that's what I do for my life right now. However, I love, for some strange reason, even if I haven't read the book, because I'm such an avid book reader, I love going to the places where books come from, or where they originated.
Yeah.
And I know it. I have watched it by now.
You watched some of it.
Some of it. Most of it. Some of it. I will watch most. All of it, better said. But point being, I know how cool that is. So I was like, I always wanted to go anyway, even though I'm not a huge fan. I mean, I can't be
Yeah.
because I just like horror. But you know what I
I
mean.
was planning on going back again this summer, but obviously that didn't work out. So
Mhm. I hear you.
We've all hear you. We all been there. Exactly. It's like we wanted to go. Oh, okay. And there's so many cool places around here in New England. Like, you know, it doesn't matter where. Like we saw Simblers in Maine as well. Someone told me recently there was like it came from one of the Stephen King books as well. I have to go research it on my notes.
Mhm.
But soon enough after the pandemic
yeah,
goes away, please.
So
hopefully sooner than later.
exactly.
Preach.
So today, we're going to be talking a lot about one of your top picks, which is Dark Tower 2, The Drawing of the Three. But before we get into that, let's start with, you gave us your top 5. So let's just go down that list. And in your 5th place, you wrote Joyland,
Mhm.
which I found very funny because that was actually my first Stephen King book.
Oh yeah,
Like that's what actually got me into King, though I had seen it in Misery prior, but that was my first book that I actually read, and I love Joyland. I don't
yeah.
think it gets
That's an
nearly
interesting
enough
start
love.
too for King's work because it's pretty unique compared
Yeah,
to like almost anything else he's written.
we don't really see that in the top 5 at all because we've asked around and we're doing these polls and whatnot on our IG
Yeah.
stories. Why is it in your top 5?
Because the first time I picked it up, I was a 21-year-old. I mean, I picked it up when I was 21. That's
Mhm.
just kind of it worked out, and then I just kind of heavily related to Devin Jones, the main character, like a lot. I don't think I've ever picked up a book or a movie or anything where I've found a fictional character that was just like I was like, that's me. Like I don't know, I related to him so much on so many levels, and especially with like the way he kind of found himself at Joyland, I just thought was really cool. And how it's not really a supernatural story, and I thought that was kind of neat. And I read it kind of in like the middle of my King journey, so it was
Mhm.
really interesting. I read actually but ironically right before I read all the Dark Tower books. So
Okay.
it was, and it was just a lot different from anything I'd read from him previously, and I just kind
That
of fell
makes
in love with it.
sense.
And then it's become a I've read it. I read it in July, this past July, and for the 4th time. So
Wow.
it's just one that I'm probably gonna end up reading every year because it's just, and I
Nice.
take something new away from it every time.
Oh, that's so sweet. Is it the same for you or no?
You actually were completely on the same page because I also related completely to Devin, like what he was going through. I'm like, oh, that's me. Like
Yeah,
I don't know what it is about it, but yeah, Joyland, that one really hit home for me. And the minute I read it, I just started reading King nonstop. So
yeah,
Joyland is very nostalgic for me. Just a story that means a lot to me, and I do plan to reread it very soon.
yeah. It's definitely worth it too.
That's sweet. In 3rd place, what do we have?
In 3rd place, The Stand.
Yeah.
So quick note: I started reading The Stand a week before the pandemic hit. So I was reading The Stand, and then the pandemic was happening, and there was just too much going on. So I put The Stand on hold. It's still
So
on
this is all
hold.
your fault.
Exactly.
You
It,
unleashed
it,
it.
it was, the timing was absolutely scary. So I do plan to read The Stand. I got a couple hundred pages in, and I really did love it. But I see The Stand a lot on top lists. Why is it on your top list?
It's so it was actually one that my stepdad actually, when I started reading King, he kept saying like, you got to read The Stand, you got to read The Stand, you got to read The Stand. So I like, when I finally got around to it, which I think it was the 5th King book I read, or 5th or 6th one actually, and I was hooked from the start. I took my time with it. I think I read it in exactly a month, and it was just awesome. I remember when I finished reading it, I just felt like I was so for lack of a better word, I was hungover. I mean, it was the big, well, that before finishing Dark Tower was the biggest like book hangover I'd had, and it was like I went through this. I felt like I went through that journey with the characters, and it was pretty surreal. And there's so much to that book, whether it's the pandemic aspect, the post-apocalyptic aspect, and then you just get all these characters kind of trying to like find their way after the world's gone to shit. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty unbelievable, and the way he's able to talk about such a vast scope. I mean, he keeps it in just America and then separates to really just two spots, but he still has this huge cast of characters, and he finds a way to make you like feel something for every single one of them, even like the bad guys. Like, and it's really neat.
I think that's really cool when an author does that, though, that it makes you feel something for the bad guy, like you said, because I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they are human, obviously. And one of my personal favorite sentences is, no, I forgot where I heard it or where I saw it right now, but it's you're somebody's villain.
You're always a villain in someone else's story.
Exactly. And I adore that, so that's pretty cool. Do you recommend, for either Dylan or whoever's listening who started reading The Stand and then the pandemic happened, do you recommend it to read it anyway? Like,
Definitely, I really do. And
like not
I'm
just
actually,
wait until it's over, basically, just like
Yeah.
just go ahead and read it.
No, definitely don't. I just read it, yeah, and I think it actually might even add a little more atmosphere to it right now. But like, I'm actually gonna read. There's a read along. Someone is hosting a read along in November that I'm gonna join in on because the TV series comes out in December.
Exactly.
So I'd like to have it fresh for myself.
So are you excited for the miniseries?
I am, but a little leery at the same time, kind of as I am with most King adaptations.
I mean, the one thing that surprised me, though, once again, I've only read a couple 100 pages of it. It's only like an 8-part miniseries, and I'm like, I feel like with The Stand, this could be seasons. Like they could really make this big, but they're choosing to do a miniseries, which I found very surprising.
I mean, I guess we're gonna get at least double the time what we did before with the '90s adaptation. That one was one.
I always forget they did a '90s adaptation.
That one's like, I think they did, I want to say like 4 to 6 hours for that one. And it wasn't bad. It was just cheesy, like '90s.
Well, it's '90s. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Comes with the territory. It's '90s.
Yeah.
We've been doing some reruns lately of like '90s shows, and then you're like, okay, we love the '90s very much, but you can tell this was made for and by the '90s. You're like, this wouldn't fly anymore.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Now, most people, King fans, when they do their bracket and they create their top books, it usually comes down between The Stand and It.
Yeah.
Where do you lie on that? Because for me, though, once again, I have not read The Stand. It's going to be hard to beat It.
Yeah.
Pennywise, like I've always loved It. Like from seeing Tim Curry as that character, killer clown. I mean, it's just.
It is awesome. I read It right before I read The Stand when I was reading my King books.
Oh, wow.
I was that psycho that banged out 3
exactly
1,000-page books back to back to back. Because I read It, The Stand, and then Under the Dome, and I think I'm not a huge Under the Dome fan, and I think that might be because of when I read it. But
holy moly,
I really enjoyed. That was another one that my stepdad, who had read it before, was like, "You got to read It," and I was like, "I know." And I think I had actually watched the Curry miniseries like the year before.
Ooh.
I read it, and I liked it. It was fun. And then when I read the book, I was like, "This is unreal!" Like the way how much more it is, and how much the differences are pretty drastic from the book to the TV series. And the TV series is pretty good, but the book is just it's pretty intense. And I think why I put The Stand ahead of it, I think it's just because of the scope. Like I think with It, you're in Derry with these 7 people, the Losers Club. Like you're with them in their childhood and in their adulthood. You get little bits and pieces of the town from the past, which is, I think those bits are actually really interesting.
Yeah.
But The Stand, like what he's able to do with just a lot more, and it's slightly longer than It, but it needs it. There's just more to it.
Mm-hmm.
So more in depth, basically.
Yeah.
Like more characters and things like that. So it makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
we
it's
do.
a bigger idea, like the whole idea of a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic where only like 0.03% of the population survive or something crazy like that. I forget what the number is, but yeah. So
No wonder you put the book down.
yeah.
So much at the time, but
Especially
I'm
at the
excited to go
beginning.
back.
Especially at the beginning of the pandemic. I feel like that was just weird. Just weird times that we live in right now.
Now we're on to your second place, which is Pet Sematary.
Yeah. I actually just finished rereading it 2 weeks ago. And
nice.
I say, almost every time I talk about my King books, Pet Sematary and number 1, The Shining, they are constantly fighting for that top spot. I think it really all depends on. I think The Shining pretty much has it, but Pet Sematary, I read that. I think that was like the 10th King book I've read, and I've read it 3 times now. But it is just, it's emotionally exhausting.
Yes.
But it's amazing. I mean, every time I've read it, I've just been blown away by what he's able to put together and how he's able to make you feel like you're part of that family. It's heavy.
I know what's. I see his face, and I know what's coming.
I mean, Pet Sematary was really the only story that I've ever read that truly disturbed me. Yeah. I mean, his descent into madness after what happens. Do you think? Well, first, have you seen either of the movie adaptations?
I have.
Do you think they gave any justice? Because I haven't seen them. I remember I saw Pet Sematary as a child, and I only remember like.
How do you watch Pet Sematary as a child? My gosh, you watched the. No wonder you love horror.
Exactly.
Sorry, I was just like as a child. Okay, sorry.
I actually like the older one.
Mm-hmm.
I think the old one's good. It's campy, whatever, 80s horror movie, but it's good. It's pretty faithful. They change a few things, but nothing detrimental. The new one, on the other hand, I went in with really high expectations. I got my roommate and my other friend to read it. Like, we went opening night, really excited. I had seen like one of the big changes they'd made ahead of time in like the trailers, whatever. And I was like, okay, well, I kind of get it. I'll see maybe if this works, like what they're going for here. And I was pretty okay with it until the last like half hour. And then I remember like looking at my friends after that movie and we're just like, what was that? Yeah. So I'm not a fan of the new movie. The new one was actually really frustrating.
So I should steer clear? Because I do love the book.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say don't watch it because some people still like it, but I just couldn't stand the last half hour. Actually, like I was angry. I was not happy.
I know. We already watched. No, we already talked about it. But isn't the same thing that happened to you with it? The second movie? Did you watch it? Was it chapter 2? Was it called?
Yeah.
Did you watch? So is it the same? Did you already watch chapter 2?
I've seen them.
Did you like it?
I really liked chapter 1. I thought chapter 1 was great. They did a great job with the kids, and then with the adults, it was really cheesy. I thought the dialogue was terrible, and then a lot of the scenes I don't know. I just wasn't really impressed with chapter 2
So Pet Sematary, the one that just came out.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same.
It's just not
ish. Okay.
What it could be.
Okay.
Yeah, part 2, I absolutely I walked out of the theater just depressed.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I loved Pennywise. And they didn't know what to do with it. It was like it was a comedy. It was it sucked.
There were a couple cool scenes, but then in the end, I was like, that was stupid. Like, that wasn't good.
Yeah, so I don't think you should watch Pet Sematary. The last one. You might give it a try one day. I don't know.
Probably I'll watch the original one.
Well, yeah.
The original one's worth it. I think.
When was the original made?
I want to say like late 80s.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because the book came out in like 83. And I want to say the movie's like pretty close to that, like right after.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
Would you say that Pet Sematary is his most disturbing story, or?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, because I think Pet Sematary and we're going to talk about The Shining soon, are the only two that have like really scared me. Like there were a couple, obviously a bunch of parts in it where I was like, oh, whoa, like what the hell? But and there were a lot of scenes in Salem's Lot that got me pretty, gave me the chills and stuff like that. But the Pet Sematary is definitely disturbing, and it hits you in a different way than I think a lot of his other books do, because it really is all about that like loss and grief and just so heavy on death.
And I won't say it because I don't, because we may have people who have not read it yet, but just that last page.
Yeah.
Just
that last page is great.
Whenever anyone says like, "Oh, King can't hit an ending," I'm like, "Have you read Pet Sematary?"
Yeah,
that ending is just the absolute best.
It's so good, and it's just because like after reading it like the third time, you're still like not really ready for it.
No.
Like and then it happens. It's just like, oh god, like you did it.
You went there.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we said it many times. First place, The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining is awesome. So, like, it was the second King book I read, and then I reread it last July, and it really blew me away, even more so the second time. But the first time I read it, I was, like, recovering from a surgery, and I felt like, and this is really the biggest reason I started getting into King so much, because the way he was able to, with that book, the way he's able to kind of make the readers feel like they're with the Torrances, and like you're in that hotel with them at every step of the way. And the past few books we've mentioned, aside from Pet Sematary, like It and The Stand, all that, they have a big cast of characters. The Shining, you're with 3-4 people the whole time, and then you get all these little ghosts, obviously, but like you're really witnessing how these 3 people deal with living in a haunted house and or haunted hotel, and how Jack's slow descent into insanity is just really, really, really well done. And there were definitely parts of that book where I legitimately felt cold reading it, and I was reading it on the beach in July, and I was like, so just the way
so
he's able
to,
just the way he's able to set the atmosphere in that book is pretty much unmatched. I don't think he gets like that close, or not close, but that descriptive, like that good in any of his other books.
Agreed. I mean, I really did love The Stand. I do want to reread it.
The Stand?
I'm sorry, The Shining. The Shining. I do want to reread it because that book was hyped up for so long for me.
Yeah.
Everyone has done their version of it. Simpsons did it.
Yeah.
And
even Toy Story.
Exactly. Yeah, Toy Story, for the love of God,
know, right?
has a Shining reference. And when I finally read it, I think it was like 2 years ago, because I just started like really reading like 4 years ago. I read it and I was like, okay, like that was like, I liked it, but it was so much hype built up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the greatest story ever told. I'm like, no, this was a really great story, but I do really want to go back and reread it at some point, because I don't know about you, but I preferred the book to the movie.
Oh,
you?
Yeah. I
what did you think about the movie?
I have gone on many rants about Kubrick's movie. I don't.
Tell us a little bit now, please. I really want to know.
Yeah, I saw that movie. That was one of the first King movies I ever saw. Like, I was pretty young. My dad showed it to me. And,
after reading the book?
No, I hadn't read the book yet. So, and I enjoyed it when I watched it the first time. And it's a classic horror movie. And then I read the book in 2014, and I was like, oh, this felt a lot different than the movie I remember. Like, maybe I'm just remembering the movie wrong. I wasn't. I watched the movie again, and I was like, what the hell is this? And I've never had that much of like a polar reaction to something before, where like I loved it the first time and then just absolutely hated it the second time I watched it. And I've watched it a couple of times since, just to like try to give it a little more like of a chance and just be okay. Like, movies are never perfect. Like, directors always put their spin on stuff, but this is like a completely different thing. It's not the same story at all.
Mm-hmm.
It Kubrick turned it into a cabin fever movie, and
Jack Nicholson playing
just
Jack
totally,
Nicholson.
yeah.
Like
And
he didn't
Wendy
play
was
for me. He didn't play John
non-factor.
Torrance. Like he played Jack Nicholson.
No, yeah, and he did a good job.
Oh yeah.
I think
It's Jack. It's
I
Jack
think
playing Jack.
yeah, Jack. He does a really good job of Jack Torrance's character, like 3/4 of the way into the book. Like, you just missed the whole. Kubrick just didn't even try to have him descend. And it's like he was just a dick from the start. It's like, and I get that in the book, Jack wasn't a perfect character at all in any way at the beginning of the movie or book either, but he at least like tries at times. And there are moments where he's like a good person, but
Yeah,
you never see that with Jack Nicholson's
no. Well,
Torrance. And that's not Jack Nicholson's fault.
yeah, perfectly said. I mean, in the book, he's such a sympathetic character. Not perfect, but he's trying. In, like you said, the movie, it's like you're a dick. Like
Yeah.
like you deserve all this to happen to you. Like I don't have any sympathy for you.
Yeah, like
End of the
Jack
book, I
Torrance in
was
the
heartbroken. Like
yeah.
this is
That
horrible.
so another ending that I think King nailed.
Oh, absolutely. For me, I don't know if you've ever read the quote, but Stephen King will take shots at that movie at
Oh,
every chance he can get.
every chance he gets.
Hates that movie with a passion. And my favorite quote by King was, Kubrick's The Shining is like a beautiful sports car. It's a beautiful sports car that has no engine.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And like, I could go on and on and on about Wendy too. Because in the book, Wendy's actually, she's a strong character.
She's
Like,
a badass.
she has her, moments where I think she's definitely gets a little too complacent at times, but it's like she grew up with a mom who kind of made her feel that way her whole
Mhm.
life. And I think that's my biggest thing when I read it the second time with the movie is you don't get any backstories for anybody.
Mhm.
And King puts those in the book for a reason. Like, I understand movies they have to condense things, but Kubrick's just cut everything important out. So you don't understand why these characters are the way they are in his movie, when like that's the biggest part of that book, and that's a big reason why these people do the things they do throughout the book, and why some of the things happen in the book. It's like because of how they lived their lives before they got there.
Exactly. Now, you had said in the beginning that you read Doctor Sleep.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I absolutely adore Doctor Sleep. I think making a sequel to arguably the greatest horror story in pop culture's mind is the hardest thing to do, and I think King nailed Doctor Sleep. Personally, what did you think of Doctor Sleep?
Yeah, I think he did a good job. I like Doctor Sleep. I don't love it, but I did like it a lot. I think for me, I almost liked the beginning of it a lot more than like where it ended up going.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked all the parts about how Dan was fighting his identity. You know what I mean? Like, he grew up, obviously he had to deal with everything that happened at the Overlook, and then he
Mm-hmm.
had to kind of grow past that, and then he slowly became his father
Mm.
with like the alcohol problems, the abuse issues, the just, he couldn't really get his life going at all. And I thought all of that, like him fighting who he was, I think was the best part of the book, was like watching Dan like overcome those issues. And it was great. I think the way he was able to make adult Dan not feel like a cheesy character was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it got, and I think Aber's is a great character, but I just didn't really connect with her like I do with a lot of his other characters. And I thought the True Knot as a bad guys, like they were creepy at times, but then the way their downfall happened I just was like, really? Like, that's how we're going to do this? Because he made them out to be so strong and powerful. And then, I don't know,
They do have a quick fall from grace, but
yeah,
for me, it worked. Like,
yeah,
I liked how I liked it.
yeah. I will say Flanagan's movie was fantastic.
Okay, I've not seen it yet. So
The
I've been
adaptation was
afraid to.
really, really good. No,
Okay.
it was awesome. It definitely kind of goes its own way compared to the book, but it has to because he had to find a way to find a happy medium between King Shining, Kubrick Shining, and Doctor Sleep. Because everybody who knows about The Shining, you talk about The Shining, the vast majority of people are going to mention Kubrick's movie. So Flanagan had to incorporate it, whether King wanted him to, whether he wanted to or not, he had to. So he had to make the Doctor Sleep movie a sequel and adaptation of both, you know, both Shinings and Doctor Sleep. And I think he did a really good job with it.
I did like what you said about Danny and how he tragically becomes his father.
Yeah.
I forget what scene it was, but someone was really like pushing his buttons, and I'm like, oh god, you need to back off. This is Jack Torrance's kid. He's just like his daddy. Like, you need to back off. And of course, daddy kind of like that. His father came out in him,
Yeah.
and like, oh, you dumbass.
I
But
think that's like the bar scene kind of toward the
yeah,
beginning of the book.
I don't know. Like, sequels, I think are just so hard to land, especially with
Yeah, they definitely
The
are.
Shining. And I thought Doctor Sleep was just a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think he did for it being a sequel to such an iconic story. I think he did do a really good job.
And now we're going to move back to your fourth place book, because let's talk some Dark Tower. Dark Tower 2, The Drawing of the Three. This book absolutely blew me away. This is probably, I've only read the first 4 Dark Towers. I'm in the
Okay.
process of reading them right now. This one by far is my favorite, hands down.
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
So it's funny. I've read the first 3 twice. Like, I started to do a reread of the series, and then college life, whatever, things just got in the way. But I'm gonna pick it back up in December because there's another read along happening, and I hopped in. And I'm really excited because I'm gonna finish it this time because I need to. Um, a lot of people who get into the series or try to say that the first book was a bit of a slog for them. Like, it is a little confusing. Like, it kind of almost feels like King just throws you in the middle of something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think once you finish the series, it makes sense, like, why he did that. Whether or not he had the whole series planned out is up in the air because I don't think he did. But the way the first book is written and kind of happens, it almost makes sense. So then you get to the second book, which I've told people, and I think this is a pretty accurate statement, that really book 1 and book 2 together are the start of the series. Because after that, like, once you get into Wastelands and then everything beyond that, like, that's when he really starts to build on the foundation and get the story really rolling. Because the Drawing of 3, I mean, it's all about putting all the cards on the table and getting everything going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you meet 3 of the 4 like main character heroes in this book, really. I mean, well, you met Roll in the last one, but you get 2 of your other main characters in this book, and it's so cool. The way he introduces these people is really, really cool. And Eddie Dean is probably my favorite King character of all time. And
Really?
this is where we get Eddie. I love Eddie.
He grows on me. He definitely did
Yeah.
grow on me. Are you excited? Oh, no, continue.
No, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask. Are you excited for the movie?
I didn't like the movie. The Dark Tower movie was bad. It was very bad.
Yeah, I'm staying away from it. I'm never touching it.
Yeah, I would. That's one I'll tell you not to watch because it is very bad. That's probably one of the worst adaptations. I'll put that in air quotes that I've ever seen because it's not King's story whatsoever. It's an hour and a half of just BS. Like, I don't know what they were trying to do.
They got one of my favorite actors, Idris Elba.
Yeah,
I was so excited. They got Matthew McConaughey. I'm like, okay, this is a cast I can work with. And then the reviews started coming out. I'm like, oh my God, like, how did you screw this up?
I saw it like a week after it came out, I think, and I walked out of the theater and I was like, that was not the Dark Tower at all. There were a couple visual things, a couple scenes that were really fun, and I think they did a really cool job like depicting some things, like when they did show like the tower in people's dreams and stuff a couple times, and it was really neat. Like getting to see it on screen was cool.
Yeah.
And like with the beams and everything, it was really neat. There were a couple scenes where Roland like was reloading his gun and like cool like shootout scenes. Those were neat. Other than that, it was just bad.
So disappointing. I mean, now you said that you've read the Dark Tower, the whole series, several times?
I read the whole series once, and I've read the first 3 books twice.
Okay. Did you no spoilers, but did you like the way he ended it? Because I cannot get a consensus from any King fans about the ending.
Yeah, so that's before I read the last book, or like when I started reading it was actually kind of right when I started this account, ironically. And I had a lot of people that were like, "Oh my God, like you're reading they were contacting me and they're like, "Oh my God, you're reading the Tower. Get ready for that ending. It's something." Like nobody really gave me anything to like build off of. They kind of were just like, it's an ending, you know, like they didn't really make it sound like it was good or bad. So I was like, okay, I don't really know what to expect. Which was, I think, good for me. And then I read it and I actually liked it. I think he definitely alludes to it in every book. And I didn't notice that until I finished it and then started rereading the first 3. And I was like, oh, whoa, what the hell? Like he kind of more or less told you what was going to happen the whole time. Like, and it was cool. I think it worked. And I think with the way he sets the story up and the way the story goes and who Roland is as a character and everything he's been through, I think it's really the only way the book could end.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just, I work with 2 old school King fans and they're like, don't read it, it's trash. I'm like, no, I'm reading.
No, it's not trash. It's fantastic. It's
I love hearing that opinion. I love someone actually getting me excited to read these books because, like I said, I read the first 4, loved the first 4. Wastelands was tough for me.
Really?
Like I really, and I'm talking to a lot of King fans on Instagram now. They're like, you don't like the Wastelands? Like, I think I need to reread this. I think I missed something.
Wastelands and Drawing of 3 are like really close for me, like in terms of when I rank them, because I think Wastelands is just, it's like your typical action adventure book, and from like start to finish. Like I think it's one of the second time I read it, I think I read it in like 2 days. Like it was just, me and my friend read it together. We just breezed through it, and it was because I just couldn't put it down. It's so exciting. There's a few scenes, you know, where he sits there and he gets Roland to like explain things to the other characters. And really, he does that for the reader to like build some of the lore up in our heads, because then he just expands on it in the next books.
Wizard and Glass is finally when he says, "Okay,
here's
the story."
Life. Here's why Roland is so dark.
I love Wizard and Glass.
See, it's funny. Wizard and Glass was the first time I read it. The series was the one that kind of was tough for me, because I do love the story. It's a great book, and it's really important, obviously, for who Roland is and why he is the way he is. But it felt like the first time reading the series, it felt like such a pause in like our main character's journey to the tower, that I was like, I want more of that. Like, come on. So I kind of like found myself having to push through all the stuff in Roland's past, but I did like it. And I do still really enjoy it, and I'm really excited to get back to it.
Yeah, it's always very interesting. Anytime that you guys talk about Dark Tower, or like Dylan talks with any of fellow King fans, it's such a mixed review. Because like what you didn't like, he liked, and vice versa. Literally, because he literally loves Wizard
Wizard and Glass.
and Glass. He did a review. He does weekly book reviews also, like on IGTV and YouTube, and he just reviewed. Well, not just. I think a while back. But he always goes back to it, and and the fact that you had to go push through your to read it, yeah.
Well, I had to push through, but I still like loved every second of it. It was definitely like an easy push, but it felt like more of a struggle than the other books.
Him and Wastelands, though.
Yeah,
that's what this is what I'm listening. Okay.
And also, I loved The Gunslinger. Book one, knowing nothing. I absolutely love that book.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I actually, when I started reading The Tower, I hadn't even purchased the rest of the series yet. When I read Gunslinger, and I didn't even really know. I just kind of picked it up at Barnes & Noble like one day. I was like, oh, this sounds cool. I picked it up and I finished it again in like I think like a day and a half. And I was like, I need the other ones. And I immediately went because I think I read it. I finished it in the parking lot at my college, like before I went to class or something. And then like as soon as I was done class, I went to Barnes & Noble and like got the rest of them. I was like, I need these. Like this, I can't not read this.
Exactly.
So before our lightning round, I do have a question about Castle Rock because I read your blog about it, and what is one of your favorite Castle Rock stories?
I love The Dark Half, which really is only like partially a Castle Rock story, but it kind of sets it like it's Castle Rock. It sets up Needful Things in a way like you really shouldn't read Needful Things without reading The Dark Half, because there's a lot of like important stuff about why they're together.
I tell everyone to read Dark Half as their first Castle Rock, because that book is in almost every single one of the Castle Rock stories in some way.
Yeah, so it's same with like Cujo and the Dead Zone are both like heavily mentioned. But I really love The Dark Half, more or less because of how important it is outside of just the book itself, like for what it means, because King wrote it. He wrote it right around the same time, mainly because he got ousted as Bachman.
Mm-hmm.
And the story of in The Dark Half, it's like Thad Beaumont gets ousted as George Stark, and the story behind him getting caught as that pseudonym is almost exactly the same as what happened to King.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really interesting that he like was able to turn his real life story into something fictional and make it like his own like kind of horrific kind of thing. But I really like The Dark Half because if you read it and you like really look into it, he writes that book in his style and in Bachman style. Like he kind of mixes things, so you get his own typical stuff, and then you get all the like gritty, like noir, pretty like crime horror that is more associated with Bachman. That's like really dark, a lot more like visceral. It's like all like the Stark stuff is more or less kind of how Bachman writes, and like The Long Walk and those types of books. And then the book is also a lot about King finding his own, like himself, his own identity, because of being called out as Bachman, and then because he was also dealing with substance abuse problems at the time too, because he wrote the Tommyknockers before, and he wrote that book like completely coked out, and then had like an intervention with his family and decided to go clean. And The Dark Half and Four Past Midnight were the two books he wrote while like going sober. Like he wasn't fully sober yet. And then Needful Things was the first one he wrote totally sober. So you can, and it's interesting to read all those kind of in succession, or like to know that ahead of time before you read them, because it makes them a little more interesting and adds some more meaning to the books.
That is incredible.
And he doesn't remember Misery, does he? I'm pretty sure he has no recollection of that.
I don't know. I know he doesn't remember Cujo.
Oh yeah, I've heard about Cujo. Like he doesn't remember that one.
It's it makes sense.
But for me, I think Needful Things was just perfect.
Needful Things is really cool.
I
think there's a lot of moments. Yeah, there's a lot of moments I think where he could have trimmed some stuff, but it's still like a 5-star read for me. It's I've read it 3 times. The third time I actually listened to it, and he does the audio, which was pretty fun. And I think that book is just really fun. Like I think the way he puts everything together, and like you said, the build up sets everything up, and then you get the bang at the end. There's another
such a bang.
Good ending, I think. And Pangborn, I can't get over Pangborn. He's awesome.
And I don't know about you, but I fanboyed the fuck out when in that final climax, I won't say what happened, but Pangborn says the sparrows are flying again, Leland gone. I was like, oh my.
Yeah.
Full circle.
A little Dark Tower reference in there too. And that last showdown.
Really?
Mm-hmm. There's like, because Pangborn says something, or he doesn't say it, but he like thinks it, like it's a thought that gets like put in his head. They mention like the coming of the white, which is what like Roland represents. More or less, like all King was trying to say in that instance was like Pangborn is a gunslinger. Like if he were in Midworld, like he would be a gunslinger. That's awesome. Kind of what was going, what was happening there.
Pangborn is a badass.
Yeah.
Before we did the lightning round, I was just curious because you mentioned before a book hangover, and I feel like both of you have different answers. Which
about
is like
who?
You had like a book hangover. Like,
oh yeah.
You read a book. You read one of his books. Of course, you're like, oh my god. Which book gave you a book hangover?
Your worst hangover.
The Last Dark Tower. I finished it and I just kind of put the book aside and stared at my ceiling for like a half hour. Like I just couldn't. And then it made it hard to like pick anything else up after for a few days. Like I just was, it messed me up. It's so good. Talk about emotionally exhausting. That last book will kill you. It's.
Yeah, you definitely got Dylan excited now for the Dark Tower. And what about you?
I can only talk about my more recent experiences, but Insomnia, that had me. I was completely blown away by Insomnia.
That one got me really bad. That one, the ending of that actually had me. I was crying very hard at the end of that book.
That book does not get the respect it deserves.
Not at all.
Absolutely loved Insomnia. I do not get the hate that just blew me away.
Yeah, and people complain about it being like an acid trip. That's like one of the weird complaints I've seen. And I was like, if that's what acid is, I think it'd be kind of fun to try. Like it looks cool. Like,
oh, I love that comment.
And just recently, I read Christine, and I
love Christine.
I do not know why, but that book had such an impact on me. The characters and just everything. That's the staring up at my ceiling. Like I was so upset that the book ended. I liked how it ended a lot.
Yeah.
But it's still just. Wait, is Christine still out there? Like.
Yeah, that was a fun little touch he added to that one because you definitely think it's like over, and then that little epilogue is cool. I like Christine a lot. I think Christine gets a lot of doesn't get the recognition it deserves either. Like I think people know what it is. They're like, oh, it's an iconic like King book. It doesn't get nearly as pushed aside as Insomnia does, but there's definitely a lot of people that are like, hey, it's okay. I was like, I think Christine's awesome. Christine was really fun.
His unending fury.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. So definitely. Now we have a really quick lightning round. 3 questions. And just reply with the first book that comes to your mind, of course. And it's for both of you, obviously, as always. Which book are you most excited to read again?
The Dark Tower books.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Dylan? Go, lightning.
Christine.
Okay. Good. Which book do you think you'll never want to read again? So difficult, I know.
Because as much as I love him, there are a few. Probably.
For our viewers for our listeners, both of these beautiful, handsome men in front of me are both looking at their bookshelf behind them at the same time, trying to pick a book.
Under the Dome.
Under the Dome.
Because
Okay.
I liked it. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I just feel like it was so much of a chore. Like it was really long and didn't need to be that long. It was a great idea, great premise, and then the ending was terrible. So it was like I felt it was just it just ended up not being worth it.
Okay. I haven't read it Under the Dome. It's high on my list. I'll let you know what I think. But
a lot of people love it, so that could just be me.
And you also read it back to back, what you said, right?
Yeah,
after reading
but like
The Stand and Under the Dome.
Exactly.
That ending after 1,000 pages compared to the ending you get from It and The Stand, which neither of those are like fantastic endings either, but those two at least had a lot better like build up and understanding to me.
Okay. What about you?
I'll say Tommy Knockers, but I'm going to try because it's on my bookshelf and it stares at me like I beat you. I'm like, no. Yeah. I got 50 pages in and I was like, I have never been so bored. This is Stephen King. Like, I'm excited to read his books.
So when you do retry it, and I recommend you do, because just go in with the mindset that he wrote that book like extremely high on cocaine the entire time. And so that makes it make a little more sense, because he does like ramble. Like you'll see there are parts that you're like, this is really cool. And then all of a sudden he just goes on some random tangent. And you're like, come back. and he comes back around and it's a lot. It's almost like his like first draft at Needful Things in a way. Like the way he treats Haven in Tommy Knockers is kind of what he did better in Needful Things with Castle Rock. Like he was able to focus it more for Needful Things, like what he was going for in Tommy Knockers. And then there are some seriously disturbing parts in Tommy Knockers, and it's really fun. Okay. But you do have to push through it at times, for sure. I'll admit that, but I do enjoy it a lot.
Good to know. Good thing you said it. Cause all right, and the last lightning round question is: which book would you recommend to someone who has never read a King book before?
The Shining.
Okay.
I would say The Dark Half, because it is, for me, it's a classic. I think it's an absolutely outstanding book. It does not get the recognition it deserves. And once they read that, they're set up entirely for Castle Rock.
Yeah.
So right. I would say The Dark Half.
Yeah, I think The Shining, just because it's iconic, and it's something that I think a lot of people who aren't even huge King fans have read or seen or know about. Mm-hmm. So it's something that, like, if you're looking to get into him, like, you can just start there and be like, okay, I'm already like pretty well versed, because you can have a conversation with a lot of people about The Shining, and It for that matter. But
yeah, when I first started reading King, I think The Shining was like 4 or 5, because I'm like, I can't call myself a King fan and saying I'm reading King books without, oh, do you read The Shining yet? No.
Yeah.
So yeah, Shining is very high up there for things you have to read in the very beginning. All right. Can you describe Halloween in 3 words?
Spooky. And I always think pumpkins and ghosts.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
Good answers. Favorite Halloween candy?
Reese's.
Correct answer.
Definitely for Dylan. For you. All right. So for last, of course, as we wrap up, we're very thankful that you were with us hanging out for an hour, basically drinking our morning coffee.
Thanks for having
me. Definitely. I mean, the idea behind, well, the podcast itself, obviously, it's about horror and Halloween. And from a horror fan to a not so much of a horror fan, as we always say. But King Month is, for all of you guys kind of like coming together and having a better way to talk about it. Where can we find you once more?
So I have my Instagram. The King Instagram is Tony's Horror Corner. And I actually have a link tree in the bio there so you guys can get all my other stuff right there.
Perfect. And of course, on our behalf, we'll link it down below, of course, and we'll tag you and everything.
Thank you.
As always, so people know where to find you, of course.
One very quick question before we sign off. As I said, I'm 300 pages into The Stand. However, I've read the first 4 books of The Dark Tower. Should I finish Dark Tower first, or should I finish The Stand first?
You are already reading the books 3 and 4 were the only ones that like you need to read The Stand first for, and you already have been introduced to the character that is important there.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think you've kind of figured that out by now.
Yeah.
Who that is. So at this point, if you already have met him in The Stand and both of those 2 books, you're fine. You don't need to finish The Stand to finish the Tower. But for other people that haven't read The Dark Tower yet, I do recommend reading The Stand and Salem's Lot first.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much because so much like knowledge. Once again, not particular for me, but I know for many of our listeners out there who are huge King fans, good knowledge.
Very good knowledge. Well, thank you, Tony, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Has been a great time. Love talking about King. Thank you for all of our listeners for tuning in. And stay tuned. Sunday book reviews every Sunday as always. And please leave your comments. Tell us what you thought. What do you think about Tony's top 5 list? What do you think about my opinions on King? Did you like Tommy Knockers? I mean,
$1 million question.
Does anyone?
You'll get a lot of no's there.
Or did you like the ending of The Dark Tower? Apparently.
And is there anyone out there like Tony and myself who actually love Joyland? Because Joyland is fucking amazing and should be read.
Insomnia.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Thank you very much once more. And we'll talk to you all, our listeners next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you later.